Poland is arming. Following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Warsaw has been investing billions in new tanks, weaponry, cyber defense, and manpower. March! By 2035, Poland hopes to double the size of its armed forces to 300,000 troops. There is even talk of the country becoming a major military power in Europe. My name is Stephen Edginton and I'm a reporter from the Daily Telegraph. I'll be travelling across Poland to try and understand whether the country is ready for war. I began in the city of Olsztyn, 3 hours north of Warsaw, where a major army recruitment fair was taking place. Do you think Poland is ready for war?
Yes, definitely yes. We are ready and we are doing everything to avoid that. Still, we have to remember about that. We are working hard to avoid this conflict, but if any of our enemies would try to fight with us, we are ready.
Is Poland becoming a new military superpower in Europe?
From the regional point of view, I would say yes. In the eastern flank of NATO region, we are one of the main forces, so we are not a global power. But in this specific region, the northern part of the eastern flank of NATO, Baltic Sea region, I would say yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about what you do here for the Polish military?
Okay, so as you probably know, there's cyber threats all over the world. And for example, it is known that for the last 10 years, Russia has been constantly conducting cyber information and hybrid operations just to, divide the world, or we can say make us weaker. And of course, we felt and we still see the presence of the malicious actors trying to interact with our networks, military networks, but also networks from the critical infrastructure, for example. And that's the reason there was a decision made in 2019 that in Poland we should establish cyber forces.
So your unit is relatively new. Do you see this as being part of Poland's wider strategy to prepare for war with Russia if this is an eventuality in the future?
So I can say that from Polish perspective and for Polish cybersecurity perspective, we can call it, I really believe that Poland is a NATO front line of battle in cyberspace. So there is huge amount of attempts of attacks to not only military networks but critical infrastructure.
In order to enlist hundreds of thousands of new recruits into the Polish army, the authorities cannot solely rely on masculine displays of adventurism and warfare. They must tap into a willingness to fight for their sovereignty. Such patriotism may be running short in the West, but does it still exist in Eastern Europe? So do you think that young people in Poland are patriotic?
Many people not raised in a patriotic value in his family.
But you are?
Yes, I am. Yes. And when I young boy.
You're prepared to die for your country?
Yes, of course. I'm patriotic. I love my country and every single matter when I step.
Do you think that Polish young people are patriotic?
Yes, absolutely. I can see a patriotic boom right now because of the fact of the Russian invasion. I think from my point of view, nothing unites people more than the common enemy.
So you think that Polish people are prepared to die for their country?
Absolutely, yes. We proved that during our history and I think it's valid in modern days, yes, absolutely.
After eating some soup in the mess tent, we witnessed some 600 fresh territorial recruits get sworn into the army.
Za sprawę mojej ojczyzny w potrzebie.
Za sprawę mojej ojczyzny w potrzebie. Byście mogli godnie wypełniać żołnierskie powołanie. Amen.
Poland has perhaps done more than any country to support Ukraine, both militarily and in terms of humanitarian aid. I visited some former members of the Polish Special Forces at a site just outside of Warsaw to witness their loading up of yet more kit ready to be driven to Ukraine. So, what is happening here today?
Od początku agresji Rosji na teren Ukrainy jesteśmy zaangażowani w pomoc. Przypomnijmy, że blisko 8 milionów Ukraińców jest teraz w Polsce. W związku z tym my też chcemy, żeby ten konflikt, który Putin rozpoczął, zakończył się tam na miejscu. Stąd też pełne zaangażowanie, nie tylko finansowe, ale także ciężka praca. Dziś jedziemy tam, by po raz kolejny być razem z Ukraińcami na miejscu.
By 2035, Poland plans to spend £85 billion on weapons, whilst this year's defence budget was a record £18 billion. To discuss Poland's rapid increase in military spending, I sat down with the country's former finance minister. So can you give viewers an idea of how much money Poland is now investing in the military as a percentage of GDP?
Well, we're going up to nearly 4% of our GDP. So we had for last few years about 2%, and now we're ramping up to 4%, and even at one stage we're probably forecasting will be nearly 5% of our GDP.
And how does that compare to other European countries?
14 months ago, I was the Minister of Finance, and in the ECOFIN monthly meetings I had with all the ministers of finance in Europe, I was saying that we should have a golden rule for increasing public debt for military purchases, and all the other ministers of finance were saying no, we don't, we can't do that, but we can have a golden rule for the green economy. They didn't appreciate really what was happening in the world. So I was saying that if the whole of Europe was a jigsaw puzzle, and I could take the piece that's Poland and put it on the western side of Portugal, I'd also probably be talking about the green economy. But we are where we are, and we have to spend money to defend ourselves and to make sure that nobody has some silly ideas about attacking Poland. But the money we're spending is really on behalf of the whole of Europe.
Now, your own family has been involved in fighting Russians for over a century. Do you see this as, for you personally and for Poland, this war in Ukraine as a continuation of that history of fighting Russia?
Yes, absolutely. It's not just 100 years, because we're talking about the First World War and Second World War, but my great-great-grandfather was in the January uprising, and they lost all their assets, and they were very lucky not to have been sent to Siberia sort of 200 years ago. So this was against the Tsar? That's right. So nothing's really changed, whether it's the Tsar, whether it's the communist regime. It's a totally different mentality. They're imperialists, and that hasn't changed. Nothing's going to change.
Poland's military expansion must be thought of within the context of the nation's history. People here still remember when Poland suffered under communist rule, and memories of Poland's horrific 20th century, in which the country faced numerous invasions, are still vivid in the minds of many Poles. Back in London, I spoke with the director of the National Army Museum, who explained Poland's historic role as a defender of Europe's borders.
I mean, Poland's one of Europe's great powers, and its history goes right the way back to the 10th century. There have been moments in history where Poland has stood on the front line of Christendom, if you like, in its traditional sense of Europe, whether it was against the Tatars in the 14th and 15th century, or against the Ottoman Turks when they were at the gates of Vienna in 1683, or indeed in 1919, 1920, when the Polish fought against the Bolsheviks, what became the Soviet Union, to prevent, if you like, the communist revolution sweeping across Europe. And Poland won that war. And of course, here we see a Poland again today, standing on the front line of freedom in Europe in its stand with Ukraine and obviously against Putin's Russia. And I think the rearmament of Poland that we're seeing today is very much in the context of that deep history of Poland's role as a bastion of Europe.
Putin's invasion of Ukraine comes just 30 years after the collapse of the Soviet bloc. I sat down with the director of the Polish National Foundation and asked how real the threat from Russia is to Poland.
To jest tak, że wszyscy żyliśmy w poczuciu bezpieczeństwa, dobrostanu, tego, że możemy planować, co będzie z naszymi dziećmi, jak będą się rozwijały, kończyły szkoły, jaką pracę zdobędą. Teraz musimy myśleć w kategoriach takich, czy w ogóle świat, w którym będziemy funkcjonowali, nasze dzieci, czy ten świat nie będzie światem wojny. I to nie jest przesada z naszej strony. Bo od dawna było wiadome de facto, że Rosjanie uderzą. Pytanie było, na którym kierunku.
Marsz, marsz Dąbrowski, dzień Polski do Polski,
Poland's membership of NATO makes a Russian invasion less likely. However, the Poles are certainly taking no risks, and in a new age of war in Europe, other countries may want to follow Warsaw's lead to prepare themselves for every eventuality.
Zgodził się z narodem.